welcome to another video, or if this is your first video of mine, hey, how you doing? Today, as you can tell from the title of the video, I'm bringing you another one of those incoherent book babbles about a book that I have relatively recently finished, and that is Coldmaker by Daniel Cohen, if you couldn't tell from the title and the thumbnail. This book was ever so kindly sent to me by Harper, Voyager, and the author Daniel got in contact with me and asked if I would be interested in receiving a copy of his book for the output of a review. He let me know the blurb of the book, and after reading that I was like, yeah, please, yes, because it sounded right up my street. And I was right. I know my own tastes. So thank you very much to Daniel Cohen and Harper for sending this to me. Very grateful. And I'm gonna tell you all what I thought about it. First things first. Overall, I gave it 4 stars. I feel like I need to explain my rating system sometimes, but I rate books completely on enjoyment. Like, things come into my enjoyment, but that is how I rate it. If I enjoyed it or if I didn't. However, I've very recently, like this year, beginning of this year, become very, very strict on what I classify as a 5-star book. So out of the 20 books that I've read this year, 2 of them have been 5 stars so far, which is not a lot. But that does in turn mean that a 4-star now has a wider spectrum of 4 stars, because all of the books that I thoroughly enjoyed but didn't quite make that 5 because I didn't feel the need to immediately go and shove it down someone else's throat and force them to read it because it was a mind-blowing experience. So everything else, I kind of got lost on my tangent there. Everything that I enjoyed but not quite to that extent becomes a 4-star. This was a 4-star. I really, really did enjoy this a lot. Like, a lot. I'm really, really pleased that I had the opportunity to read it. So, let me tell you a little bit about what this book is about. This book is set in a world where there is no cold. It is a sort of barren land where it's desert, the rivers are boiling, there is no cold. Everything is scorching hot. And this amount of cold that does fall only falls to the ruler of this kingdom. So, you know, dictatorship. So the Jaden race, which is what our main character Mecca is part of, sorry about my dog, are forced into slavery. The Jadens are slaves to the nobles of this land. The nobles control the cold. The Jadens get none. So they are in these sweltering conditions, dehydrating, not being entitled to any cold, except a tiny amount in their morning water, I believe it was. So, you know, slavery conditions, and on top of that, there's then the whole abuse and the way they're treated and such on top of that. So, Micah, our main character, otherwise known as Spout as a nickname, they've got it rough. They've got it real, real rough. But Micah has always dreamed of being an inventor. He wants to make things and create things. However, because of his conditions and, you know, his role in society, he's not allowed to do that. So he illegally, behind closed doors, tinkers just a little bit. Like, nothing incredible. Well, it is kind of incredible. But, like, small things like shoes and fans and stuff to help his people. But obviously that is illegal because he's a Jaden slave. So that's what it follows. The whole culture in this book, like, it's very religion-driven. The religion of this culture is pretty much the whole plot. The religion is what spurs everything. It is the reason that things are the way they are, and the Jadens are kind of forced to worship in a certain way, and they, through fear, believe it's the right thing, and it's all very, very complex, and I must applaud Daniel for doing such a great job with the building up of this complex culture and religion in a way that I could understand. Like, I got it. I could understand why things were the way things were, and I think it was so well done because it was such a complex setup in the way the religion and the culture worked. But it worked well, and I really enjoyed it, and that in turn meant I could enjoy the plot and following Micah so much more because I understood his surroundings. Does that make any sense? I think it was really well done, is basically what I'm saying there. In terms of the characters, as I say, Micah is our main character. Micah, I was pronouncing it Micah the whole time, but I don't know if that's correct. As a main character, he's great. He's such a little bean. Like, you just want to support him and cuddle him and pick him up when everything's so bad, because as your protagonist and in the situations that he's in, you know, you want to support him, and he was good. He was a great main character. And through the complex situations and stuff that he was in, like, there was conflict in his mind. He at points doesn't know what's right and what's wrong, and he always goes with his heart, and he was a great main character to have. And then there's Ab, who is his dad, who is just, I found him hilarious. He's such a typical dad character, like dad jokes sort of dad character. And I loved him as well, but I also loved the way that he supported his son, even in doing the like illegal tinkering thing. Like, it was great. I loved that relationship that they had as well. And then the side characters that are all part of their group of Jaden slaves, what is it, their barracks. Some of the side characters were good, some of them, we didn't really see a lot of them. There was one side character that did annoy me at most turns, but I think that was intentional. But yeah, some of the side characters were really great, and, you know, it gave you a decent insight to the way they had to live with this massive bunch of people, which I suppose is also why some of the side characters weren't so greatly developed, because there were so many of them to, like, emphasise the conditions in which they were living, like, packed together. Anyway, yeah. And then there was Camlish, who was a very complicated character, I think. He was still quite young, and he thought he knew best, and he thought he knew what he was doing, and it becomes quite complicated for him, and I think he was a really intriguing character to watch, and his guilt just for being the person he was, just for being born into the culture he was born into, his guilt was written all over him, and I think that was so well done, because although he thinks he's acting in the best way, his guilt just shone through all the time at everything, and I think that was really well done as well, and he was a great character. And then there was the Vicaress, who was the most brutal woman I think I've possibly ever read about. She was horrific and amazing. Horrific, but like amazingly horrific. She was so cold and vicious, and yeah, great stuff. Just as a bit of a tangent from talking about the brutality of the Vicaress, that kind of leads me into the whole atmosphere of this book. A big portion of the atmosphere of this book is just the brutality of the world that they live in, how vicious and violent the world is to them, and that really comes through. Like, it's uncomfortable. Not uncomfortable to read in a way that makes you want to stop, but in a way that makes you want to fix it. You want to fix the uncomfortable, violent, brutal atmosphere that this book has. And I think that was really well done as well. Yeah, I enjoyed that. I did enjoy that. As I say, it was uncomfortable, but not in a bad way. Does that even make any sense? Oh my goodness. I must say that although I did enjoy all of the book, there was a point where I was starting to drag. It was when it was getting really snowy and stuff outside, so I'll blame that because this is obviously set in a desert, and when it was like really snowy and icy out, all I wanted to do was read Polar Fantasy. So I put it down to read a Polar Fantasy briefly, but when I picked it back up, I got right back into it, and I think then was when the turning point of this book happened, and from that turning point, the second half was just so action-packed and non-stop, and I couldn't put it down. So I think following that turning point, I won't tell you what it is because that is a spoiler, but from that turning point, the second half just flew, and I flew through the end of this because I just couldn't put it down. It was fantastic. The ending was fantastic. And this is part of a series, or it's the first one in a series. So there will be a sequel. I couldn't tell you when, I don't know. But there will be a sequel, and I can imagine I would probably pick it up. I mean, that very much depends on the time span of how much of this I've forgotten in that time. As of now, I would read the sequel. The ending left with such an intrigue and how, like, I want to know how things progress, so I imagine I would read the sequel, definitely, yeah. As I said about my rating being more on enjoyment than anything, that does in turn mean that I very rarely really have much to say about the writing style. However, for the sake of this, I will say the writing was great. Like, I couldn't fault it. It was easy to follow, quick to read. I enjoyed it, and as I've already touched upon, the development of this world and this culture and the religion and stuff, I think it's all so complex, and it deserves to be complimented because I think it was done so well. Like, so well. So yeah, overall I really enjoyed this book, and that's sort of all I have to say. Although, I believe it's classified as a fantasy, I think. It's not as fantasy as the fantasy that I read. Like, there isn't, or at least yet, there isn't magic, but there is those fantasy elements in there. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I would recommend it. I absolutely would. If, you know, if you're looking for, I don't know why you would be looking for this, but the slavery in this and the culture and the complexity of all the dynamics there and stuff, like, I do recommend it. I do recommend it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm gonna stop babbling now because you've probably heard enough of me. But yes, I enjoyed it. 4 stars. Good job. Well done. So yeah, that is that for today's video. I hope you have enjoyed. If you have, please give us a thumbs up, chat to me down in the comments about all sorts and everything. If you've read this book, if you plan on reading this book, and so on. Thank you again to Daniel and Harper Collins for sending me the book. I thoroughly enjoyed it, as you can tell from the last however long. And yes, if you aren't subscribed and fancy subscribing, I'm eternally grateful for that. I upload every Sunday and Wednesday and some odd days in between if I'm feeling generous, and I will see you next time. Bye!